Welcome back to RetroWheelsVault, where horsepower never dies. I'm RetroVault for your guide through the golden age of roaring engines and chrome dreams. Today we're diving into the 1968 Ford Ranchero GT, a machine that's part pickup, part street brawler, and all attitude. Because modern cars forgot what muscle means. Here's a little nugget that proves the 68 Ranchero GT wasn't just a pretty face with a bed. It had grit. Even before it officially hit showrooms, a modified Ranchero GT with a 390 V8 and a 4-speed manual transmission tackled the 1967 Mexican 1000 Rally and came out on top in its class. That's right, the Ranchero was out there kicking up dirt, rocks, and probably a few unsuspected spectators' egos, proving it could handle off-road chaos as easily as it handled suburban errands. Think about it. This was before the Baja 1000 even became a household name, and Ford had already thrown a Ranchero into the fire and said, yeah, it'll survive. The 390 engine roared like a lion with a caffeine addiction, and the 4-speed manual kept the driver in complete command, navigating treacherous terrain without breaking a sweat or a leaf spring. It's a reminder that the Ranchero GT wasn't just a muscle car masquerading as a truck. It had the heart of a rally car, the toughness of a prize fighter, and the audacity of a kid sneaking out past curfew. Off-road glory? Check. Style? Double check. Legacy? Absolutely stamped in steel. In 1968, Ford gave the Ranchero a makeover that said, I can haul lumber and brake cards. With the Fairlane line getting the new Torino treatment, the Ranchero followed suit, growing larger and bolder, becoming the biggest since the full-size Brute of '59. This thing looked like it could tow your ego and still have room for your pride in the back. The new design ditched the soft curves for sharper, more angular lines, a look that said it was done playing nice. Its new horizontal grille and quad headlamps gave it the kind of stare that could intimidate a Dodge at a stoplight. Ford and most of Detroit were switching back to that long, lean, horizontal headlamp setup, and the Ranchero wore it like a custom suit from Motor City's finest tailor. The wraparound front side marker lamps, pulling double duty as parking lights, and rear side reflectors weren't just there for show. They were part of the new federal safety regulations for 68, but Ford made them look stylish instead of just slapped on. Altogether, the Ranchero's design was pure confidence on wheels. Muscle, practicality, and attitude blended into one tough-as-nails package that reminded everyone that trucks could be sexy too. Under the hood of the 68 Ford Ranchero GT had a lineup of engines that ranged from I'll get you there to hold my beer. The base Ranchero started modestly with a 200 cubic inch 3.3 inline 6, good for daily duty, but not exactly the stuff of drag strip legends. Step up to the GT though, and the real fun began with a 302 cubic inch 4.9 liter V8, cranking out 210 horsepower at 4,800 RPM and 300 foot-pounds of torque at 2,600 RPM, and it had enough grunt to make the rear tires think twice about traction. With a 9.5 to 1 compression ratio and an optional Holley 600 CFM 4-barrel carb, it breathed just right for a crisp throttle punch. But Ford didn't stop there. The 390 cubic inch 6.4 liter V8 came in two flavors, the H code with 265 horses and the S code with 335, both serving torque like a buffet, topping out at 445 foot-pounds for the big boy. Then came the monster, the 428 cubic inch 7-liter V8, with 335 ponies and the same torque figure, but with more snarl and less forgiveness. This wasn't an engine, it was a sermon on speed, and the Ranchero was the pulpit. Each option roared with Ford's signature attitude. No nonsense, all noise. When it came to putting all that muscle to the pavement, the 68 Ranchero GT gave you a few different ways to play conductor of the mechanical orchestra. You could start simple with the 3-speed top-loader manual, sturdy, no nonsense, and built like it was forged in a Detroit steel mill by a guy named Earl who didn't believe in lightweight. It got the job done, but if you wanted to really dance with the power band, the 4-speed top-loader manual was your ticket. The gearbox wasn't just a transmission. It was a handshake between man and machine. Tight, deliberate, and guaranteed to leave you grinning like you just outran a Chevy. Of course, not everyone wanted to roll their own gears. For the smooth operators, Ford offered the 3-speed Cruise-O-Matic automatic, perfect for those who preferred their power delivered with a little grace instead of grit. It shifted like it was reading your mind. Well, your subtly caffeinated mind anyway, and still let that V8 growl without turning every drive into a workout. Whether you like to grind your own gears or let the car do the talking, the Ranchero's drivetrain was pure Ford engineering at its finest. Durable, responsive, and ready to haul both altitude and asphalt. The 1968 Ranchero GT rode on the Torino platform, meaning it wasn't just a pickup, it was basically a muscle car with a bed. Ford took the soul of the Torino and grafted it onto a chassis tough enough to haul whatever life or your poor decisions threw in the back. The result? A machine that could do a burnout and a hardware store run without breaking a sweat. Up front, it sported a double wishbone suspension setup, which kept the ride surprisingly composed for something this burly. Think of it as the Ranchero's way of saying, yeah, I've got manners, but I can still throw a punch. The double wishbones allowed the front wheels to stay planted during those spirited corners, keeping all that torque from turning into chaos. Out back, things got a little more old school with the leaf spring solid axle. It wasn't fancy, but it was durable enough to take a beating and still come back asking for more. Together, this combo gave the Ranchero a perfect balance between muscle and utility, and handled like a heavyweight boxer in a tux, refined when it needed to be, brutal when provoked, and ready to rumble no matter the road or load. Slide into the Ford Ranchero GT's cabin was like stepping into Ford's idea of futuristic comfort, at least by late 60s standards. The interior was all new, sharing the Torino and Fairlane's distinctive 4-pod instrument cluster. Those 4 round pods gave off the illusion of an engine-turned dash, like something straight out of a jet cockpit. But Ford's layout was pure function hidden in flair. From left to right, the first pod housed the coolant temperature lights, both cold and hot, and the left turn indicator, just to make sure you didn't roast your engine while making that smooth left. Dead center was the speedometer, your main reminder of how far over the limit you were about to go. The third pod carried the oil pressure and charging system warning lights, plus the right turn signal. On fancier trims, that could be swapped out for a tachometer, but because who doesn't like watching the RPM screen? The final pod hosted an optional clock, perfect for timing your quarter-mile runs, or a decorative clock delete plate if you prefer to live free of time itself. A new seatbelt warning light even joined the party, flashing briefly on startup to remind you that safety had finally entered the muscle era. Barely. Outback, the 68 Ranchero GT came with a standard open differential, sporting ratios between 3:1 and 3.25:1. Plenty fine for cruising, though it didn't exactly make both tires pull their weight. If you wanted real grip, though, Ford's optional traction lock limited slip was the way to go. That setup made sure both rear wheels dug into the pavement instead of one doing all the spinning while the other just took the day off. It turned smoky one-wheel peels into proper power launches. In short, the open diff was polite. The traction lock was pure mischief wrapped in Ford engineering. The 68 Ranchero GT wasn't just a car or a truck. It was a full-size statement on 4 wheels, stretching a commanding 201.1 inches long and 75.6 inches wide. This thing took up space like it paid the mortgage on the road. At 53.5 inches tall, it wasn't exactly towering, but that low stance gave it the kind of profile that screams speed even when it was parked. Riding on a 113-inch wheelbase, it had just the right balance between stability and swagger, like a linebacker in a tailored suit. Depending on the engine and other options, curb weight ranged from 3,300 to 3,650 pounds, giving it the heft of a heavyweight fighter that could still move with surprising grace. You didn't just drive a Ranchero, you commanded it. The long wheelbase helped soak up bumps while keeping it planted to the corners, and the wide track gave it that confident, muscular stance. It wasn't some dainty import or lightweight economy box. This was Ford metal in its prime, a rolling slab of American confidence, the kind of machine that looked like it could tow a barn and still make it to the diner before the fries got cold. Size, style, and strength, all perfectly measured. The 68 Ford Ranchero GT was the automotive equivalent of a mullet. Business in the front, party in the back. Its biggest strength was versatility. It could haul lumber all day and still pull up to a Friday night drive-in looking like a street fighter in chrome armor. Thanks to its Torino-based platform and burly V8 options, the Ranchero handled like a muscle car with a bed, which, let's be honest, is the kind of madness that only the 60s could produce. It had presence, power, and just enough refinement to make you feel civilized while you roasted tires. But for all that brawn, it had its weak spots. Ride comfort wasn't exactly Cadillac smooth, especially with the leaf spring rear end bouncing around when unladen. Fuel economy? Let's just say it drank like a sailor on shore leave. And while that long body looked killer, it also meant the rear visibility was about as clear as a politician's promise. Still, the Ranchero GT's charm came from its unapologetic attitude. It didn't try to be perfect, just fun. It was a rebel with torque, a workhorse with swagger, and a car that reminded you that practicality didn't have to be boring. It could be loud, fast, and proud. The 1968 Ford Ranchero GT wasn't just a vehicle, it was Ford's mic drop on the concept of practicality. It blurred the line between muscle car and pickup, creating something that could carry a load of gravel one moment and a load of attitude the next. It had the heart of a Torino and the work ethic of a farmhand, all wrapped in steel and swagger. Sure, it wasn't the most refined machine on the block, but that's exactly what made it special. It was raw, loud, and unfiltered, like rock and roll on four wheels. Cars like this remind us why we fell in love with the road in the first place. They didn't need touchscreens or driving modes, just gas, gears, and guts. The Ranchero GT stood as a proud middle finger to modern utility vehicles that forgot what utility used to mean. So what do you think? Was the 1968 Ranchero GT the perfect balance between broad and brains, or just a wild experiment that Ford somehow made work? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more classic muscle mayhem, and as always, keep it loud, keep it classic.